Hey everyone, RemanX here, and we're gonna go through kind of a long one today. We're gonna talk about flipping buffs, debuffs, safeguard, trauma, and all the different things that go along with it. Hopefully, I capture all of this and give you guys some insight. And I'm gonna tell you guys, it's not easy. And with the current iteration of the game, especially with some of these newer characters like Sersi that have come to the game and are gonna do specific actions in specific areas, I want to talk about what they do. So we're going to start with debuff flipping, what the opposite of the debuff is, because that's going to be probably more relevant currently in the current meta, because of the characters that can flip negative effects to positive effects. And then we'll go the reverse because we'll go backwards to Omega Red. So let's start with ability block. Now, remember, it's interesting about this because we'll just show you guys the reason why it's a little bit counterintuitive. So first things first, ability block, okay? If you flip it, it turns into evade, okay? May not make sense. There really isn't an opposite of ability block, so that makes sense in that regard. But if you were to flip evade, the opposite is bleed. I know. But we're going to go through this because it's important to understand how these will work, so that you understand what to expect on the other end of your actions, okay? So one of the things that we've been talking about is why certain characters are going to become viable and the like. And so one of the things is being able to flip heal block. And when we get to heal block, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So blind, opposite of stealth, that makes a ton of sense, right? Disrupted, opposite immunity. And also this is a tool from MSF.gg. I want to make sure you guys understand MSF.gg is one of the best tools. If you support Taijay and Pimtoxy over there, it's definitely worthwhile to get access to some of their other tools that are available. Then you have defense down, and the opposite of that is defense up. Bleed in regeneration. So a lot of this makes sense. Now, this is the big one, right? This is the thing that we were talking about for the past week, why Sersi is probably going to be maybe even necessary for Dark Dimension. Is because she will flip heal block, which pretty much every character in the past release has something to do. Colleen Wing, Nebula, Gamora with her special when she's empowered. These are all things that I think people forget, that all these heal block can be turned into death proof. And so that's a big deal here. And then we're going to talk about the minor bleed, minor regeneration, and we'll come back to trauma and safeguard because we're going to talk about some special case scenario to help you understand these a little bit more in depth. All right, minor defense down, and these are applied basically by the opposite of minor defense up when it's flipped. So these are going to be the ISO effects here. Offense down, okay. All right, offense up is pretty straightforward. Slow and then speed up and then stun, okay. Now this is another one that's probably a little counterintuitive. It's going to be the opposite of that, is counterattack. I actually like using that a lot with the symbiotes to get some extra damage and debuffs out there on certain turns, and we'll talk about we've talked about the symbiotes and why I like that in certain actions, okay. So remember, if you use anti-venom to copy buffs or copy debuffs to buffs, you're going to be getting that. Same thing with if you have heal block from venom, understanding that you're going to be able to get death proof is going to give your symbiote to get out of jail free card. All right. So probably the hardest ones to remember are ability block, which is evade, heal block, which is death proof, and stun, which is a counterattack. Now let's talk about flipping buffs. Now flipping buffs, because some of these are way too powerful, they're not going to flip into, so a character with evade isn't going to flip into ability block. Very few characters can interact with that where they can actually flip the buff, but the ones that can are able to do so, like Venom and some of the newer additions, wink wink, Omega Red. But don't expect them to get ability block because that's just different. They turn into bleeds. It's just because the actual debuff itself is too powerful. All right, death proof is going to be flipped into a bleed, immunity into disrupted. And so order of operation is also interesting. We'll do a whole nother video about that because I don't want you to panic. There is an order of operations and it depends on buffs and debuffs, and sometimes things get resisted in the order of operations and it causes havoc in this new meta that we're in. But don't panic. It's never in our favor. Just assume that you're going to lose. Defense up, Opposite is defense down. Deflect, opposite is bleed. Evade, bleed. Regeneration, bleed. Notice the theme here is a lot of the stuff's just going to convert to bleed. All right, minor defense up. Same thing we saw there, minor bleed, offense down. Stealth. So again, you have this resource to kind of understand what to expect with these abilities. And then taunt, opposite is bleed. I actually just did Beast's Basic because I use this basic a lot to clear taunt. And on the mutant nodes, I'm wondering if being able to clear taunt and then potentially flip defense down, which is what his basic will do, will give me an extra edge to help on the 2.3 node. Need to make sure I've got a lot of extra time on that first mutant node. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's get into Safeguard. All right, positive effects can't be cleared or flipped. This effect cannot be copied or spread. So let's talk about Safeguard as a buff. Now, Safeguard is unique. Now, some abilities can be copied, but none of them are going to be removed. So characters like Sersi, who can remove and then add a +1 of death proof, we're going to have to really watch the interaction because we're not sure if it's 100% working as intended just yet because of the fact that Safeguard plays a role. I think it works like Black Widow, where it actually is copying the effect and then it attempts to clear. So it's important to understand that Safeguard is just preventing that clear function on the ability. So let's give you an example. We just talked about Black Widow. If Black Widow went into Adam Warlock, she can copy buffs, but she won't clear them. Remember, they also can get resisted, so those clear will be on that. So remember, she has that ability when in stealth. She can copy that. Another thing about it is spreading Safeguard isn't possible. So if somehow you got Safeguard, and by the way, this isn't something that happens outside of Infinity Watch right now, but let's say you can put it on Nick Fury as a prime example, it couldn't then be spread to other allies. Okay, so we're going to talk about a case in point that happened, for trauma. The trauma is very, very similar in that regard. Negative effects cannot be cleared or flipped to positive effects. Okay, and it can't be copied or spread. So let's take this for instance. Let's say you have trauma on a character and Phoenix is on your team. The character in question has stun and trauma applied, and you use Phoenix's ability, her special. You're not copying the trauma. The trauma isn't going to be spread. She'll get she'll get the stun because it's going to reference the original character. The other character isn't going to lose the stun, and she's just going to get the stun. So think about that for a minute. So if a character has trauma on your side and Phoenix does her special, all you're going to be doing is applying the debuffs. You're not going to be eliminating any buffs. That's working as intended because you're not removing those buffs. But it is referencing the previous buffs on the character. She's still going to draw them off. But unfortunately, they're bleeding too bad or the ability block was too devastating. The trauma applied prevented the removal or the negative effect to be cleared. So again, this is high level stuff. Same thing with trauma. You can't spread it with Hela. So just be aware that if you're looking for these interactions, this is why it's not happening that way. And the reason why we talk about it is it isn't clear cut on how some of these interactions work. So again, reference msf.gg. They have a lot of the debuffs here. There are some very specific case in point scenarios, a lot of nuanced stuff that happens in the magic of ISO effects and the like that can change how some things happen. Like for instance, death proof may get applied to a character at the end of the turn. You'll see the death proof icon, but somehow you're still able to deal a killing blow to a character during an ISO attack. And it's something that we saw in the Gamma Raid with the triple tap striker skirmisher with Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. So again, this is the high level stuff, nuance like that. If you guys have questions about some things that work, I'll try to answer them in the comments below. communicate with each other. We'll try to clear these up, and if another video comes out of the comments, we'll definitely try to record videos, showcase some different examples of all of these. But again, this is important. Anti-venom, all right, negative effects, understanding what you pluck off has been important. Now with Sersi, understanding that you're going to be able to flip those negative effects and how to understand what you're getting on the other end. Omega Red, same thing, flipping those negative effects or positive effects into negative effects is going to help you understand the nuances of that. And there's going to be a lot of times that you're going to be able to use that to your advantage, and knowledge is power. Remember, guys, I do things you don't have to, and I've been trying to figure out some of the new order of operations and looking at like safeguard and trauma and finding these use scenarios where sometimes they break the rules. I'll say this, there haven't been many things that surprise me about it, because I think it's been relatively clean with the exception of the ghost buffs if you're using low graphics mode. Catch you soon.